So every month we try to have this conversation, and this was supposed to be in February, but due to one or two things, we are having it in March. It doesn't still affect anything. We still have the same information and all that. So today, the discussion is primarily centered on the African-China trade and startups. So want to discuss to find out the African-China space, the business opportunities, the challenges, and the things that businesses can do to benefit from the space. You look at Africa, a population of over 1 billion. China is also over 1 billion, so that's about 2 point something billion. So this is a large market, this is a very huge market for the space. So what can businesses do to benefit from what the space is having to offer? So we are speaking on the theme unveiling the symbiosis. That's African startups and the Chinese advantage. So unveiling the symbiosis, African startups and the Chinese advantage. So want to see that relationship, that connection between African startups and then the Chinese advantage. What can they benefit from China? What is China looking for that African startups can provide? So basically that's what we are going to talk about today.
Alright, now this is Isaac Demuyakor, PhD, Associate Development Commentator with interest in applied economics, trade, value addition, and China-Africa activities. So to go straight to our first question, Isaac.
What do the Chinese investors want from Africa? And what can African startups do to get the advantage from the Chinese?
Okay, so first of all, when it comes to startups, we have what we call the startups, and then we have what we call the business incubators and all that. So I'll put all these two into perspective. So when we are talking about startups, we are basically talking about establishment of young companies, young companies who have come and they want investors to invest into their idea. And then we have the business incubators where you have your business idea already and you are looking at the chain of how to develop that business. Because I'm putting this into two perspectives so that as the discussion goes on, we'll understand why I'm saying that. Now, the reasons why the Chinese will be attracted to Africa or to be attracted into African into African startups is because, number one, when it comes to our governance system, we are having a stable governance environment in Africa now, unlike those years that we have a lot of disagreement, wars, and other things. So one thing that attracts investors, especially Chinese investors, into Africa is the stable governance system that we have. That is number one, and that is the foundation. Now, number two, the Chinese, what is also attracting the Chinese into Africa is you realize that more and more people are now schooling in China and are now understanding the Chinese. So for me to come to your country, you need to understand me, I need to understand you. Yeah. So the Chinese actually understand Africa very well because they have conducted a lot of research into Africa, and they understand Africa very well. But we, those in Africa, we basically don't understand them. So for the past 10 years, Africans have come to school in China and they are now understanding the business strategy and the business ideas about China. So if you understand me and I understand you, it is easier for us to have a conversation. So it is the same way the Chinese, we from Africa are beginning to understand the Chinese, and that is also attracting the Chinese to African startups because now we are beginning to understand them. And Africa on China is a platform where we also use to educate people. So people read about China from Africa and they get to understand how the Chinese do their business. So that is also number two, that is which is attracting the Chinese into Africa. And the final thing too is what will attract the Chinese to Africa it's also our population.
Yeah.
It's also our population.
Yeah.
China has 1.4 billion people. Okay. Africa has 1.4 billion people.
Yes. Yes.
Okay. So if China, everybody in China is a businessman, and almost only 20% or 10% of Africans are business people. So the 90% are consumers, I would say. So
yes.
The Chinese are ready to come into Africa, to invest in Africa, and also be part of the development stories in Africa. That is all. So these three key things: good governance, we understanding ourselves as Africans and Chinese, and then the population that we have. So any startup that you or any idea that you bring up, the Chinese would like to tap into it. Thank you.
Yeah. Yeah. And especially the population aspect, it's a huge market for them.
Yeah.
It's a huge market for them. That is how they look at it. The numbers are very important for the Chinese. They want to make sure that they take advantage of the numbers,
Yeah.
Even though Ghana is just 30 million, but to them, plus Nigeria combined, that is a huge market, and Kenya and all of that. So I believe in especially that third factor. I think it's a very huge factor. Yeah.
Wow. All right. So the numbers are an influence for China. The numbers are area of interest for China. Stable governance in most African countries. We must add that in most African countries.
Yes.
For
majority.
The Sahel region is actually very volatile, and businesses are somehow skeptical about it. And also, Chinese and Africans are kind of now understanding themselves more. Or Africans are getting to also know Chinese more, so they are willing to do business more. That's very insightful. Thank you once again, Isaac, for joining us with this. So I just want to make some comment on that. When you look at the Africa-China space, for instance, the African side is more of a consumer. So the Chinese produce, they add value. I'm asking this because you are someone who is interested in value addition. So the Chinese add value to what they have. They come to Africa, and then they peg back much of the raw material, then send to China to add value again, and then bring it back to Africa. And
exactly,
what do you think African startups could do to turn this around, at least to get a balance, if not to overtake the Chinese in giving added material, added value products to China? What can we do as Africans to get that balance?
Yeah, so this has been a question that most people ask. So when we talk about value addition, we are basically talking about what can you add to what you have to be able to be attractive or to be able to be competitive. I'm sorry to tell you that it is impossible for Africa as we stand to add value to anything at all it has. Because you see, there are so many factors that comes into value addition. Number one, to become competitive on the international scene, okay, you must have affordable power. Okay, when I talk about affordable power, electricity, it should be affordable. You must have constant water supply. Okay, and then you must also have the required skills. These three things are determinants of value addition. Now, if I say constant or cheap power, okay, it is the power that you use to run your factories. Okay, it is power that you use to run your factories. Now, imagine my base for power generation is nuclear, which is very cheap, and yours is, let's say, thermal, which is very expensive. Now, if I use my nuclear energy to produce something, I can sell it cheaper. And you using thermal to produce your product, you cannot sell cheap because the source of power is different. Now, number two, water. You use water for everything. Okay, water is used for everything. It is water used for washing, used to do a whole lot of things in your factory. And if you don't have a constant supply of a certain quantum of water into your industries, or into your factories, it will be impossible for you to even produce something or even add value. And number three, like I said, the human resource. Skilled labor is something that is required. And it will be very difficult for Africa to get there because the mindset to get there is not there. We don't even have the required infrastructure to even do that. So when we talk about balance, it will be very difficult. The only thing we can do is have a constant policy that drives the interest of Africans. Okay? Now, Africa has looked to the West for a very long time. Instead of we Africans taking the bull by the horn and say that we can do it ourselves, China is now up and we are looking towards China. We are not saying that we are looking towards ourselves. We are looking towards China. Now, when you have two sides and you can go to, you not even think about yourself again because it is easier for you to get something from these two people.
Yeah.
For you, so that you can get power. Because it's all about political power. What can I give my citizens to get this political power? So I can easily go and take from the West and also go and take from the East and make my people satisfied. So it will be very difficult for Africa to add value unless we have leadership that is willing and we have citizens that are waiting to make sure that that happens. So it will be very difficult for us to say we are adding value to the things we have. Thank you.
All right. So it will be very difficult for us to add value in our current state unless we're able to change. So I want to. I am much particular about the mindset because, as you mentioned, power, skill, and whatever that's added can all be gotten. Africa actually has a bigger potential when it comes to power than China. Why? Because clean energy, solar, hydro, and all those things, Africa has much more. But we've not been able to even exhaust or to utilize up to 30% of that. So, as you said, we are looking at, we can get from the West, we can get from China. So we are the happy child who is ready to go to the father and mother to take, instead of trying to go out and hustle for ourselves. So I actually understand. And what would you say African startups, knowing that the mindset is not there, and we also are lacking behind in terms of technology, utilization of resources, and others, what would be the thing that you'd say African startups can leverage on? What can they do to change this? Or what can the African youth who is interested in doing business with China or in China do to turn the situation around?
Well, turning the situation around, I don't know, but we have to have a long-term policy as Africans, and we have to force our leaders to give us a long-term policy on doing business. Okay, for example, if you come to China, okay, it will be very difficult for the Chinese to deal with you if they are not part of it. I hope you understand.
Yeah.
It will be difficult for the Chinese to help you if they are not part of it. Because if they are not part of it, it means you are chopping them. They are on the table and you are chopping them. So they want to be part of the food together so that you all eat the food together. And while you are eating the food together, they are learning from you in the discussion. So there should be a long-term policy, that is laws, that we say that, oh, for the next 10 years, we are going to, the constitution or the law says that we are going to empower 1,000 business startups. And these 1,000 business startups, it doesn't matter where it comes from, whether the East or the West, who are going to help us to drive this policy, that 1,000 startups in the next 10 years. Okay, so every year 100, every year 100, and it should be an attempt that the government should do. So African Union can come up with a policy framework for all African countries, where every African country has its unique input into it. Because even in different countries, we are very unique in the way we do things. So AU can come, have a policy, let it melt down into the African countries, then the various African countries will also fine-tune it to their taste. Then the AU will now drive the funding process. Okay, come to China, go to Vietnam, go to Singapore, go to Japan, come to the US, go to UK, go to Russia and all that, so that we can have an embodiment of Africa that we want. Because you see all these Western countries and China and all that, they also took something from each other, but they fine-tuned it to become like their own, and that is what they are using. So basically that is what I can say.
Right.
So it's supposed to be a conscious decision from the political side and also from even the youth side, because as a business, if the politician makes the policy that we want to support startups and the startups are not there, it definitely wouldn't work.
Exactly.
So I get it. So Sylvester, what would you say so far?
Yeah, especially with the you letting them being a part of the business aspect of it is what I want to touch on. You know, you asked the question how African startups can get the involvement of Chinese and how they can turn the situation around. You see, I think I mentioned this before, maybe during our last session, that African startups should find a way of letting the Chinese know the sustainability, uniqueness, you know, and the potential of the ideas and the project that they have and the business ideas that they have. The Chinese would like to know that and how they fit in, right? If you are saying they should come and partner you, what exactly is in it for them? Remember, these guys are business people, you know. So if they are coming in, what is in it for them? Especially the sustainability of it. If your business is just trying to do the same old things over and over again, I'm not sure they'll be attracted. So I think it's important that African startups look at it from that point of view. The uniqueness of what they're doing, because I believe that the Chinese, about 1.4 billion people, so many business people, business ideas. I'm sure they've already done almost all that we are doing here. So what will make them come to you, to support you, to fund you, is how you can demonstrate that, look, this one, you will have not done it in China before. This idea is particular to Africa, it's particular to Ghana, it's particular to Kenya. So that is why I need you to come on board. And I'm sure they'll be happy to do that, right? So yeah, that's the little I can add to it. It's important for both the entrepreneurs, the startups, the governments, the businesses, the people to show that kind of partnership. What is in it for them? How do they form a part of the process? I think it's important.
All right. So yeah. It's everyone is supposed to be part in the process. And I also just want to find out, we cannot put away the fact that China for now, what their interest is in Africa is maybe also in the raw material. Though you can see partnership with Chinese and African startups that are moving in different directions, especially in electronic vehicles, these electric vehicles industry.
And also hospitality and those things.
You see solar taxi in Ghana partnering with Chinese BYD to work on their solar taxis. There's also Jet Motors. There are others also in Kenya and then Nigeria who are also trying to seek out those partnerships. But I see the advantage for Africa is in the agribusiness. I don't know if it is the same feeling you share and whether African startups can actually focus on this area to get an advantage, or do you think we can go head to head on technology and maybe other areas?
Yeah, so in China, okay, you know, when we're about to start, I spoke about startups and then business incubators.
Mm-hmm.
You know, startups were given to us by the Western world. when we talk about startups, and it has been inculcated into our curriculums, our business, and whatever. When you are doing business administration, they will talk about startups and all that. They will talk about business incubators and all that. But one thing that I want us to focus on is that China does not, I would say, quote unquote, invest in startups. Like, as in investing, like you have an idea and they are buying into that idea. No, for now, China is not doing that. What China is doing is that they want to help you to build your infrastructure. Okay, so they have that mindset of government to government collaboration. Government to government. So if you say, for example, you want to export from, let's say, Ghana or Kenya to China, the Chinese will not mind you. But if you say that, oh, through the government, I want to export to, let's say, China, they will start listening to you. Okay. It's recently that the Jack Ma Foundation also started their business. Exactly. That they give in money and all that. But you see, with that type of investment, the investment is to tap into the supply chain of the Alibaba company itself. So where they want to sublet things to you is, let's say, fintech. Okay, fintech is something that can help the Alibaba and the Jack Ma Foundation in their online sales platform. Okay, so if you come up with an idea of fintech on a payment platform between Africa and China, they will quickly tap into it because it serves whose interest? It serves the Chinese interest, because you are finding innovative ways where you can pay money for the services and goods they give to you. So they will tap into it. But it will be very difficult for you to come to China and say that, this is my idea, this company, this is my idea, and I want you to invest in it. No, unless that idea fits into the supply chain of their company. With that, they will be, and even with that, they will want the government involvement. Let me give you a typical example. African World. African World is more or less the Chinese African Development Fund, the CAD fund. Okay, there is a government component in it. There is a government component, even though the Chinese are having the larger share. There is a government component in it. You are talking about agribusiness. Yes, agribusiness. We can enter into agribusiness, but the Chinese will want government involvement, the government assurance. Okay, which is totally different from the West. The West does not want government involvement in business because they say that government has no business doing business. but the Chinese believe that government has business to do business, because without government it will be impossible for business to strive. So they have various type of like policies and funds that all of us can tap into. Okay, so they have something like the Alliance for Belt and Road Business School, which is the ABRBS, which they are in Ghana. ABRBS is in Ghana. In fact, they have a shea butter plant in I think Western region also. Yes, they have a shea butter plant in Western region. Then they have the Asian Infrastructure Investment Bank, which you can go and take money from. But all these things are government to government. Because I don't know whether somebody has researched, apart from Jack Ma's foundation, I don't know if somebody has researched into Chinese as a Chinese man coming to do or coming to invest in, let's say, a startup in Africa. I really don't know.
They are beginning to come gradually. Apart from Jack Ma, I think Transient Holdings is organizing some startup competitions here and there, trying to support African startups. I've seen a couple of them on LinkedIn, but it's not that much. I mean, I agree with what you are saying. It's just recently that, and it is Alibaba that is on a larger scale so far.
Exactly.
Majority of them are low key. You don't even know what is happening.
Exactly. And when you even talk of transients and other things, they are all wanting to tap into their supply chain that can help them move goods from China to Africa. So you talk of, some people talk of Infinix, some people talk of Tecno, some people talk of Xiaomi and all that, Huawei and all that. They invest in small technical startups. For example, if you are into the IT area, it's easier for Huawei to cut you. Okay, and Huawei is cutting you because it's going to plug in its activities or its supply chain through you. Okay, so these are the differences.
Look, I think this is very insightful, and informative, and this is why we need to have such conversations. We need to understand from the perspective of people like Isaac, how African startups can cut Chinese people, how they can involve Chinese people in their business. And one of the important statements he made is, how do you make sure that what you're doing can help the value chain, the supply chain?
Exactly.
This is a very interesting thing that many African startups might not know. So if they are watching us right now, if someone is watching right now, I think it's important for them to plan their projects and their ideas based on this. If you want to attract Chinese investors, you need to go a certain way. So I think it's a very good point that Isaac made. I don't know what you think, Clifford.
And I just want to when you mentioned about the value chain, I've actually done a couple of articles on African startups and Chinese investors. Okay. And I've got a number of them. We have this venture capitalists. We have GSR Ventures, we have NetEase, IDG Capital, Hill House, 3W Capital, and Sequoia Capital China. These are the top ones who are interested in Africa. But what Isaac said, and I never actually thought about it this way. I was only working on startups in Africa, and if you look at the startups that I got, the article is on the African on China website. If you look at the startups that they've invested in, you would see that they actually built into what Isaac said. Yes. They've invested in OP, Pampi, Casabana, Jetstream, PowerPay, AutoCheck.
As your hypothesis is working.
Fintech or things that are in the logistics. If it's logistics, what does China do with that? They transport things to Africa. So if you are building a startup that can help them to be able to move their things faster from China or Asia to Africa, then they will be interested. If you are building a fintech that can help bring much of the African people online, sometimes you see something on Alibaba or AliExpress and you want to pay, but they are asking for different payment methods, PayPal, Stripe, and all those, and you don't have. So if somebody is investing in a fintech that can bridge this gap, you see that the Chinese will be interested. So actually, I'm getting why I'm not understanding why all these investments are moving in that direction. So I actually get it. So it means, as an African startup, if you want to get into the Chinese market, or if you want to bring something into the Chinese or get Chinese partnership, then you should be able to either bring a government involvement, just like Kenya is doing with the avocado export, or like Ghana, as you mentioned, the African World Airlines is doing with the China African Development Fund, or you have to do something that will shoot their value chain.
And I think what Clifford, if I can chip in something quickly. I think what they do is sometimes to the alternate. I will try and test Isaac's hypothesis going forward, because last year's Jack Ma Hero, the winner, the grand prize actually was from Nigeria. Health, I think it's in the health sector. He actually won the grand prize. So I'm trying to see how that also fits in. But of course, they wouldn't make it that obvious. Which for me, honestly, at the end of the day, if it can also help Africans, I'm fine with it. because there is no business partnership that you think somebody's a Father Christmas. All these people will come in with an interest, but at the end of the day, like this Well Health project that I'm talking about, who won the grand prize, if it is benefiting the people of Nigeria and by extension Africans, I'm fine with it. So we have to pattern it in a way that we can attract them, but also we shouldn't forget how it can benefit our people. Yeah.
Sure.
So, Isaac, I would just also want to take your input on this. So, we've been talking about how to get the funding or the partnership. So, apart from bringing in capital, apart from Chinese investing in the capital side of African startups, what else? What value can they also give to African startups, or what value should African startups be seeking from China, apart from the funding side or financial side?
I think it's a very important question.
So the mindset of the Chinese, or the characteristics of the Chinese, is to teach you how to fish. They are not going to give you money that go and do whatever you want to do. So that should be a base point for every African startup, that the Chinese is not going to give you money. Okay. Now, what the Chinese can do, or what startups can learn from the Chinese very fast, is technology transfer. Technology transfer. It is very, very important. What they can give you is affordable technology transfer, because the technology is affordable for the Chinese, because they have invented some of their own and are giving it. So as a startup, it is very important that you focus on the technology transfer. That suits us. And the other thing is innovation. Innovation that suits you, the startup. Because with the Chinese, they are ready to give you what they have. They are ever ready to give you what they have, so far as you have a mindset that will also help you. Okay? Because the Chinese way of doing things is to make sure that you are okay and he's okay, but you also have to be smart. We know how to do the things, but the Chinese way of doing things is being faster than you. Okay? So when it comes to startups should be ready to tap into the innovation of technology and learn how to let the Chinese transfer technology to us, so that we can also learn from them. So I don't know if it makes sense to you.
Oh yeah, it makes a lot of sense. And as we were talking, I was just thinking at what areas can we look at technology transfer. You look at China, they are a leader in the clean energy. They are the biggest exporter of solar panels or solar energy in the world. They produce solar panels more than anybody. Africa is here with a lot of potential in that area, but less has been done. So maybe startups could be thinking about what can we do to tap or to take advantage of our solar potential and get that Chinese technology transferred here. So actually, this is something insightful, and if a startup and thinking of starting a business, I think this is something you should be looking at. Yeah.
Still on the NH and the technology transfer thing. I think is very important. Apart from they giving you the money, which Isaac is saying they will hardly do, I think it's important to tap technology. One of the areas I believe African startups and business should tap technology from China is in the agriculture field.
Yeah,
we need to tap a lot of technology from China to grow our agriculture. Affordable technology, because we need to be able to feed ourselves. And I am very passionate about Africa's agriculture development, because food is still very expensive in Africa. Food is very expensive. Inflation, in fact, food is driving inflation in Ghana currently, which is crazy. So how can we adopt technology? Yes, how can we adopt technology, affordable agriculture technology from China to grow our agri-business and our agri-sector. That is, I believe, that is what the government should be looking at, and that's what startups should be looking at. And that is exactly what Africans from China will be doing in the near future. How do we connect? And as part of my consultancy business, how do I connect African startups to technology from China? How do we get that collaboration? Recently I helped some of them import machineries from China, fish feed machines to produce fish feed, for tilapia, for catfish, and those, this type of technologies. Even beyond that, how do we make sure that our farmers use drones to spray their crops instead of doing the manual spraying? How do you make sure that they are able to know what is happening, the humidity levels on the farms, the sunshine levels on the farms? The Chinese have all these technologies. How do we tap? I think these are some of the issues we should be talking about, and I hope that we can expand more on some of these things practically.
Yeah, and let me come in here. Some of the ways that we can use to tap into their technology is trying to have access to their market. For example, if you want to enter into the fintech business, you can come to China, come and learn something about their fintech style of ways of making things, or even if you want to partner a company, the company can invite you, even though they will not open up everything to you.
Yeah.
But you coming to see the things they do will encourage you to do more, because you have to ask them more questions. And the other thing too is we should be ready for them to mentor us.
Yeah.
That is one thing which is missing in the current generation we have. They don't want to learn anything.
But Isaac, let me just cut in. The problem has always been the language barrier. So what do you think can be done? I have an answer in mind, but I want to just get your perspective.
So when you a lot of the Chinese who are on the international scene doing business can speak English.
Right. Okay.
And most of their brochures are in English.
Right.
And majority of the things the Chinese do are in English. Just that if you can speak Chinese, it's an added advantage to them.
Right.
It's an added advantage to them because the technology and their style of doing business and mentorship and all that is in the book. It's written before it is being acted on. So you can take the book. This is because we don't like to read. So it is difficult for us to take a book to read. So when you read what the person is doing, you know that it's in accordance to what you've already read. And social and behavioral activities are different. Somebody will use A, B, C, D to get to Z. Somebody to start from B, come to A before you get into Z. Okay, so even though there are different ways of going to Z, the book that you are holding or the expertise which is being transferred to you is the same. So it's like a puzzle, and that is what we call innovation. Right. Maybe when you were coming from B to A, you may find something different from when the person who was moving from A to B did.
Yeah.
And what you found in between is your innovation.
Yeah.
And it's something new that you can also expand on.
Yeah. Yeah.
So these are some of the things.
Yeah. So apart from these solutions to the language barrier you just professed, I think one of the other ways is to utilize the surging number of Africans who speak Chinese as a second language. In recent years, we've had a lot of Africans who have learned, the Chinese language. Some of them higher proficiency, others lower proficiency. I think it's important that African startup businesses who want to tap these technologies, want to understand how the Chinese people think, their modus operandi in business and all of that, go through some of these, speakers, because it's not enough to just know how to speak the Chinese language, but what to do with it, right? So that is the other way, apart from reading the books which they have written in English and all of that. I think that is another way. You go to Kenya, you go to Nigeria, we have a lot. In fact, some of them are now singing the Chinese songs, so exactly. But I believe that there's another way to go about it. Utilize that proficiency to help African startups to learn the technology. So yeah.
All right. Alright, so we need to learn. That's the thing. You need to learn. So I just want to build on that. Definitely there are gaps when you are trying to enter into a new market. There are always barriers that some people face. So I just want to use this as our way of ending. Uh, what are the gaps that we startups in Africa are likely to face when trying to deal with the Chinese? And what are also the risks? There is nothing that you do without risk. So what risks are there that startups should be looking at when dealing with Chinese or entering the Chinese market?
So when it comes to how to the risk and all that, like the language and other things, these are major or minor issues. But you see, when it comes to the major risk we have right now is the media war. Negative propaganda about China by, of course, opponents and all that. Now, if you are a startup and you buy into it, it is a major risk that can destroy your business, you know. And you see, when you have two things and you are double-minded, it is very difficult for you to focus on one. At first, we were all going to the West. There was no alternative. We were all going to the West. So startups, we just say, oh, I'm going here. Oh, I'm going here. Oh, these are my business practice. Now you have multiple. So am I going east or am I going west? That is number one risk that we have. The number two one is the media one I spoke about, where you'll be again double-minded again as to whom to choose. Then the number three one is, you know, the Chinese are very hardworking. They work more than 8 hours a day. In fact, they work up to 9 o'clock. Every Chinese will tell you, yes, they work up to 9 p.m. So they rest from 4:30 to, let's say, I think 4:30 to 5:30. Then they go back to work.
Wow.
So they'll be coming home around 9 o'clock. Especially those who work in the factories.
Yeah.
They come home around. So they are very hardworking. So understanding their culture, understanding their mindset, understanding their skill and all that is also very important. But you see, we have a laid-back culture, a very lazy approach. We are not proactive. That is another risk. And it is a social risk, you know, or will I say a cultural risk. So in as much as we have to be very proactive, we have to make sure that we are up to date with everything we do, because everybody does his or her things differently. The Americans do their things differently. The Europeans do their things differently. Africans, we also do our things differently. Same as the Asians also do things differently. So what is very unique about us, if we are not able to identify what is unique about us in developing anything that we have, it is a risk to ourselves. You get it? And one other thing that I can also mention of is perception. Perception and mindsets or cognitive imperialism is also a risk in that is a major problem. Negative perceptions, and you know, perceptions can kill your startup big time. If you have a negative perception, know that your startup is going into a ditch. Always be positive about the things that you are doing, your startup, because with the Chinese, they are ready to help you. I always say they are ready to help you, but also make sure that you know the type of help that you want them to give to you. For example, not everything can be sent from US to China, and not everything in China can be sent to US, because there are laws governing it. What about Africa? So one other risk that we have is the type of laws which are not tailored towards our trading partners that will favor us. That is also another risk.
All right.
I think.
So that's a lot for people to consider now. If we are going to China, want to partner China for any business, you should also think about these areas that you might face the issues. So we are out of time, so I just want to take final remarks from both of you. So I would go with Isaac, your final remarks in 30 seconds. What would you say?
Okay. So my final remark is startups should not always be looking at businesses. You know, startups can also start looking at opening cultural or drama companies that will come into China to perform, to showcase our culture, for them to know us more. Okay, this is a gold mine that a lot of people don't know, because culture are one of the major catalysts for you to transfer your identity to other people, for them to know you more. Okay, so the health sector is also a very green area that we can also tap into in terms of health equipment from China and all that at an affordable price. So startups in Africa or business incubators in Africa should start looking at the entertainment and the health sector, which is one of the determinants for us to thrive in Africa and to establish a unique relationship between China and Africa. That's what I can say.
All right. So Sylvester Menese, your final remarks in 10 seconds.
Look, I'm blown away with some of the perspectives and insights that Isaac shared with us. Very novel and fresh ideas that I hope that people who chance on this video would consider. There is something called the knowledge action gap. I hope that people who chance on this will not just listen to it and go away, but will find ways of practicalizing it. And in case they are looking for further consultation and directions on how to implement some of these things, they can always rely on us. Our website is there, Africans from China. I mean, folks who want to even reach Isaac directly to understand some of these things on a deeper level can contact us, on our social media platforms, our LinkedIn, our Facebook, Instagram, and all of those things. Yeah. So all I have to say is that it's been a great session, and I hope folks who chance on this would find it valuable, and in case they need it, they need further directions, they can call us.
Thank you very much for having me.
All right, thank you once again. So today our guest was Isaac Demuyakor, social development commentator. He had his PhD and masters in China. His interest areas in applied economics, trade, value addition, and health administration. And what we spoke on today was the understand the symbiosis, the African startup and the Chinese advantage. So what can African startup benefit from the Chinese Africa-China space? So as we always do, I will come your way with another episode at the end of this month or early next month. And most of these things that we're speaking about are actually articles that we've done or will do on our website. So you can always visit our website, which is displayed on your screen right now, www.africansfromchina.com. You can also follow us on social media to stay interactive. And if you have any issues, you want to do business or anything you want to do, you have difficulties, our doors are open. Sylvester is a Chinese African, so he is always available to offer support. Isaac is there, and like most of the other people who have been on our show before, we have a network of people who are willing to support you and your business in the venture into the China African space. So thank you once again. My name is Hassan Ghana, and this is the conversation on Africans from China.